Hello. Uh-oh. I can't hear you. Oh,
Hello?
there it is. Can you hear me?
Hey, I can. Can you hear me?
I can. So, oh, I lost you, Rachel.
Okay. Sorry, you're going to have to put me back in.
Yep, no problem. I'll I have to invite you back in. No problem. No problem. How was your day?
It was good. How was yours?
Bad, not bad. Actually, I was at home today just working on the course.
Nice.
I'm gonna finish up by Wednesday, actually. So
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm officially done yesterday. So,
awesome! Congratulations.
oh, thanks.
Can you see my screen right now? My
I can. For some reason, my video's not popping up, but I'm here.
Okay. So you can see my screen, you can see me, but you don't see yourself, right?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. Cool. All right. So what I'm doing today is I'm doing a little presentation on some of the common snags or problems that you can run into when changing your tires at home. So I'm sure, you know, as a tradesperson, you probably run into some of these yourself in some some way or another. All right. So this video is not about the procedures or the safety procedures in how to change a tire. It's more just how to get yourself out of some of the trouble that you might run into. If you're watching this, chances are you already know how to change your tires at home. So I'm going to go through a scenario here. This would be something that would be pretty common in the rust belts, like where I'm from in Ottawa. Say you've got your car jacked up, you're about to pull the wheel off, and problems ensue. So you go ahead, you start taking your wheel nuts off. You've got your brand new impact gun here, brand new socket. Say you take 3 of the nuts off, but the 4th one, you can't seem to fit the socket onto the nut. It's not going on. You try rattling it, but instead of taking the nut off, it actually just rounds out the outer edges of the nut. So you're kind of stuck at this point. Here's a picture of 3 different rounded out nuts. This is a common thing where the outer chrome shell or aluminum shell, depending on what kind of vehicle it is, it blisters up because the inside steel portion of the nut oxidizes. So it pushes the shell out, and then the socket doesn't fit tight on the nut anymore. So when you try and put the nut on it, it either spins that shell or it just rounds the shell off completely. Here's another picture of kind of like the last stages of trying to get one of these strip wheel nuts off. I didn't take this picture, but I've been in this situation before where you try welding to the end of that wheel nut. You try welding, say, like another nut that's actually intact, and then you try to use a socket on that new nut that's welded to your old one. In this case, this person ended up destroying the rim, destroying the nut, and the stud. So I think in this case, the only way to get this rim off now would be to use a torch. If you try and drill through this metal, it's going to be hardened now that you've welded to it, and chances are you're not going to have a drill bit that's going to cut through it. So not good. Here's another picture of a swollen wheel nut. You can see that outer edge, how it's pushed out. Super common on like Dodge Caravans, Ford F-150s, any vehicle that uses like a two-piece wheel nut where you've got that center steel core and then a shell on the outside. So as a professional mechanic, we have a special tool to remove these swollen lug nuts. They're stripped, or sorry, they are stripped lug nut remover sockets. They have teeth that cut into the outside edges of those nuts, and they work pretty well. You hammer them on. They only work for taking the nuts off. You can't use them for installing the wheel nut afterwards, but they're really good for getting them off. But chances are, a DIYer at home probably wouldn't have this set. So what do you do? This is the most successful and the most common trick, and it's taking another socket, usually a socket that's a size bigger. So say your wheel nut's a 19 millimeter, you'd be using a 20 and hammering it on there. Or say you've already rounded out the outside edges, then you could use a size smaller, so an 18 millimeter. Now, in hammering on that socket, you want to make sure you get a tight fit. It's going to do two things. One, ensure the tight fit, and two, it's going to break up that oxidation or that rust in between the threads and loosen up the nut so it comes off easier. So really, really good technique here is hammering on a socket as hard as you can onto the nut. All right, so say you got the wheel nut off, great. That's the first step. All the wheel nuts are off the car, but you realize that the tire or the wheel still won't come off the car. So what's going on? Like you've got the wheel nuts off, you're pulling at it, but it's not moving. This is also another common problem in the rust belts, and it's oxidation again. It's oxidation in between the wheel and the hub that's bound up. It's causing the wheel not to move. So the way that I usually attack this, and most other mechanics do, is we'll usually spray some penetrating fluid in the lug nut holes and also around that center hub hole. That's going to help just add lubrication between the two surfaces. And if you have long enough, if you let that penetrating fluid sit in there for half an hour, it might actually soften up some of that oxidation too, so it comes apart easier. Now, after you've done that, the next thing you're going to have to do is to use some impact force. So in this example here, we've got a hammer and a buffer, which is a piece of 2x4. So basically you take your 2x4 and you put it on the side of the rim and you hit it as hard as you can until you break away that rust, and the wheel will come loose. You can do it from the front side, you can do it from the back side. A little tip would be to thread on one of the wheel nuts, just a few threads, so that when the wheel does pop out, it doesn't fly off or fall on you or fall on whatever. It's just a little bit safer. So you've taken the wheel off, and this is what you see: your wheel hub and all this rusty, scaly oxidation here. This is what you've been fighting. So all these little chunks that were bound between the wheel and the hub, they've got to be cleaned off now. There's different ways of doing this. Professional mechanics will generally use an air tool or a power tool of some kind to grind away that scale and rust. If you don't have this at home, you can use a file, a screwdriver, like a wire brush, anything to take away as much of that scale, as much as you can anyway. So again, those are the two surfaces that you're worried about: the back side of the rim and the front side of the hub, the mating surfaces. What you want to do is best job as you can to clean those two areas up before reinstalling the rim. And here's another little cross-section diagram of what you're fighting. These little yellow jagged pieces here, that's the oxidation. And the reason you've got to take this stuff off It's not just so that you can reinstall and remove the wheel later on in life easily. It's if you leave these bits, these little pieces of scale in between the mating surfaces, as you start to drive, over the course of say 200 kilometers, those little pieces will break away and they'll move around. And when they move around, then you form a gap between the wheel and the hub. And then once you form that gap, these wheel nuts are no longer holding tight, and they can actually rattle themselves off just from road vibration. So once you've got that stuff clean, the next step is putting your wheel nuts back on. Obviously, you're not going to be able to reuse the stripped or the rounded out wheel nuts, so you can buy yourself some new ones. Usually wheel nuts are pretty common and pretty standard, unless you have really big alloy wheels. You might have to get them from the dealer, but they're generally fairly inexpensive, ranging from $1 to $4 a piece. Once you got those on, you torque your wheel. So torque them to spec. Manufacturer torque specifications usually run between 65 and 105 foot-pounds on cars, and you can see them up to about 150 on trucks. You also want to make sure you do it in a star pattern. And that's the end of your troubles for the day. Or is it? Now this poor guy, he's just lost a wheel. And this could happen to you too. And you'll think to yourself, well, what did I do wrong? I thought I cleaned everything. I thought I torqued everything to spec. What did I miss? So what you did miss was retorquing your wheels. After about 100K of driving, you want to make sure that you retorque your wheel nuts. Again, you're not going to get all that scale and all those little bits of debris out of the mating surfaces. And there's still a possibility that those little bits will break away, causing a gap and causing looseness. And simply just vibration alone too can cause a jarring effect that will loosen off fasteners. So again, after 100 kilometers of driving, recheck the torque of your wheel nuts, and you should be good after that. And that's it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks.
I always wondered why you had to get your wheels retorqued. I never knew that.
Yeah. It's a common question. A lot of customers will ask, do I really have to come back? Is it that big of a deal? And I'll kind of give them the short version of this, that yeah, your wheels could fall off. And even after that, I would say only maybe 10% do come back to get them.
Really?
And I've had in my career, I think, three vehicles that lost their wheels, and I'm pretty anal about cleaning and torquing, so it's not common that they fall off, but they can. Like out of the tens of thousands of wheels that I put off and on, it's a small percentage, but it can happen, and it obviously isn't a good thing when it does happen.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not.
Yeah. And a lot of times the media will attack the mechanic or the technician. If you hear of a wheel that came off on the highway, it's right away the technician is blamed, but it's quite possible that they did everything they were supposed to do, but the wheel just came off from vibration.
And the person maybe didn't come back. So then whose fault is that really?
Right. Yeah. So exactly, you got to make sure that you make it clear that they've heard you and acknowledged the warning. I would write it down too on my invoices. It's a little, make sure to come back after 100 kilometers of driving to retorque your wheels, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we just got our tires done on our truck. Oh, it was probably like last year.
Right.
And that's what they said, like come back in like 100K. And we were like, but do we have to? Like, really? That's really inconvenient. And they're like, no, you got to. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
We'll come back.
You can always check them yourself. You're not really retightening. You're just making sure they haven't come loose. So if you just took your whatever 22 or 21 millimeter socket and went over those nuts, make sure that they're all they're all snug. None of them feel looser than the rest. That's generally all it takes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was good. I mean, those are a lot of things that I didn't know. I really don't know anything about tires or mechanics or anything like that. So that was very informative for me.
Great. Well, thank you.
Awesome.
I think it's all good. I'm just doing a screenshot. Hopefully that works. And I think I recorded that. So we're all good.
Awesome. Okay. Well, good luck on the rest of your course.
Thank you. All right. Take care.
Okay. We'll see you maybe in another course.
Yeah. See you then.
All right.
Bye now.
Bye.